let's all play a little game together. In it, we each love Kirby. I know, very realistic game right there. We each play the game so many times, we know them like the back of our hand. In fact, I may or may not have traded the back of my hand for Kirby Mass Attack, but I won't fess up on that. Regardless, we both love them so much we want to push ourselves and learn how Kirby speedrunning works. Because it's the best game ever made, we choose Superstar Ultra and try zooming through Spring Breeze just to get a feel for things. Early on in the first level, Green Greens, there are some Poppy Brothers. You can inhale one of them to get Bomb and use that to quickly beat Wispy. It's simple, it's sweet, and Bomb is one of my favorite abilities, so in my book, it's based. You want a peep of what this puppy's doing though, and you see me dive headfirst into this Poppy Brothers. Why? Well, after a few more bonks, I inhale 2 Poppy Bros at once, the screen starts going insane, holy cow, then suddenly I have Jet. I zoom through the rest of the level, beat Wispy even faster, and now have the fastest ability in the game for the rest of Spring Breeze. What just happened? Mix just happened, a mechanic that a surprising amount of players don't even know exists. The specifics can get pretty murky from game to game, but to make it simple, if you inhale multiple enemies at once, instead of getting a copy ability, a roulette of copy abilities is gone through on screen super fast. You've got 3 options from here. You can either wait the roulette out and see what it gives you, you can interrupt the roulette zoomies with the push of a button to end the roulette early, or you could ignore mixing entirely via liking this video, watching it from start to finish, and subscribing to the channel. All of them really help me get some exposure, and in the long term, will let me make more videos like this one. Special thanks to my head-patting Fluffle fan pup trends, Biohazard, Tyke, Vilafar, and remember, Miss K says, help! I'm stuck in a YouTube video! You need to subscribe on Twitch to save me! I love you all. And don't get me wrong here, even though that third option is by far the smartest, the other 2 are vital to making a Kirby speedrun what it is. It may sound simple, but not only does mixing have depths of its own, but having the ability to get any, ability by doing something as easy as inhaling more than 1 enemy at a time is crazy low effort for the highest reward possible. There is a ton that goes into mixing in every single game that it's available in, to the point where I could make multiple videos on each instead of just cramming everything into one video. Doggos aren't known to be the smartest though, so let's have some fun and see how insane mixing is in a bunch of different any percent Kirby speedruns. Nothing wrong with other categories, of course, but I'm only insane enough to cover any percent. You will leave this video smarter technically than you were before, I promise. No, I don't promise. Let's just get started. Since we already talked a bit about Superstar Ultra, let's start with both of the Superstar games. There are a lot of differences between these two, but let's start with what wasn't changed. Notably, what Kirby speedrunners call the Mix Roulette Wheel. When you inhale 2 enemies, like I described before, the mix itself isn't random. The roulette is actually the same every single time, and starts depending on which enemies you've inhaled. For example, if the enemies you inhale start you on the copy ability, the actual ability copy, why did they name it that? And you let 15 abilities scroll by, you'll get sleep every time. Why am I mentioning sleep specifically? Well, duh, because it's base. In the 4th level of Dynablade, it's called Candy Mountain. I know this because I went to Candy Mountain, Charlie. You can inhale a Rocky and this thing to easily get a mix that starts you at copy, if you'd like to try for yourselves. Of course, it's easier said than done because of how fast this mixed roulette wheel goes by. Trust me, it goes by fast, way too fast. And while it may look fast, it's about to look even faster when we break down some numbers. Specifically, any ability at any given time is only on screen for 4 frames. Yes, that fast. If you somehow don't know, 4 frames is like nothing. It's really hard. We don't need to explain it much further. That said, because the timing is the same every time, once you get that part down, it's very consistent. And thankfully, there are a few tricks you can use to ease the process. For example, if you know the ability you want is early in the mix, you can time it much easier. Remember the Rocky and... Alright, fine. What is this enemy's name? I'm going on with Kirby to find out. There's Bomb's page. You get it from... Jungle Bomb! Okay, that's an enemy name for sure. I talked about in Candy Mountain. In speedruns, you mix for the invincible candy using these two enemies. It's the second ability in the roulette, so you can pretty easily get the candy if you press the button really quick. It's still a 4-frame window, so you need to be careful, but it's much easier when the ability you want is very early in the roulette. There's a similar mix in Revenge of Mennonite very early on, where you can run to the left and get Jet as the third ability in a mix with this Yo-Yo Gym and the laser ball. Kirby enemy names, everybody. Leave a comment below with your favorite Kirby enemy name. Trust me, you have so many options. To actually get a comparison done here, since that was the whole point of bringing up both Superstar games, this mix is actually really different in the original Superstar. Mixing in general has a super different vibe to it. Ultra is a lot more lenient with inhale spacing and timing, making it actually very easy to actually get to your mixes. The original is not so lenient and makes mixing much trickier to get right. Using this Revenge of Mennonite mix as an example again, the setup in general is a lot harder. You need to bait the laser ball from this top of the screen to the bottom, while also going far enough up to make the Yo-Yo Gym respawn. Then you need to run and guard into the Yo-Yo Gym to get the two really close together, make sure the laser ball isn't spewing a laser at you, inhale the both of them, and then mix. It's really easy to mess up, and unlike Ultra, you're not even mixing for Jet, you're mixing for Crash, which is later on in the mix, so getting the ability you want is a lot harder. It is worth getting Crash though, so that you can see this. Superstar in general is a far more volatile game than Ultra, but very little of what makes KSS insane actually applies to the mixing process. That's the one area of the game that's comparable to Ultra, but the game's physics and overall feel are, as I understand how the cool kids use it, insanely whack. This great cave mix in Ultra is super simple, but trying it on the original can almost feel like a gamble. And I'll admit that this could be a me thing. I've played a lot of both games, but I don't keep my preferences for Superstar Ultra over every other known thing in this living universe hidden, like, at all. Wrapping my head around timing for guarding into these bird eyes in the original has always been an uphill battle, and it could be because of Ultra. I don't know, though. I feel like eventually you've got to blame the game eventually, right? Right? Okay, fine. Whatever. Let's talk about a different game then. How about one that I've gone on record complaining about time and time again over the years, Return to Dreamland. I'll keep it brief since I talk about this a lot in my ability solos. Go watch my ability solos. But mixing in this game is by far the most brutal in the whole series. Not only do you need to inhale 3 enemies compared to the usual 2, but the roulette wheel itself is entirely randomized every single time. By extension, this means that the starting point in the mixed roulette wheel is also randomized, eliminating most of the strategy that goes into mixing. The one saving grace is probably something that you'd never even think of. See, before we were memeing Xbox Go Home thanks to the Kinect, the Wii had this nifty little button called the home menu button that allowed you to do some nifty things like connect controllers, adjust the Wii remote mic volume, and this mostly mattered in Smash Bros. Brawl when you were picking Captain Falcon. Yeah! Actually, you know what? Kirby too. You know what? While we're here, let's just have Mennonite and Day-to-Day. I'm sorry, I really like Brawl.
Fight me!
And, of course, returning home. However, if you press the home menu button and, by chance, manage to catch a peek at the ability currently on that roulette wheel before the menu itself pops up, you can actually snag that ability by holding 2 and pressing the home button again, like magic! This doesn't change the RNG feeling of mixing, but if nothing else, it really helps you get an exact ability that you want. And trust me, you need all the help you can get here. On the bright side, as you can tell from the background footage, or I don't know, anything any % speedrun related to this game at all in the history of history, Wing is the only ability you need for the whole run. This gives Return to Dreamland a bizarre and admittedly kind of funny dichotomy. It has the single worst mix in the whole series being nothing but RNG dependent, but since you only need to do it once and it happens less than 5 minutes into any given run, it's really hard to actually get upset over it. Unless, of course, you're vying for a world record or something, in which case, yeah, have fun attempting over 2,000 runs and completing just over, I don't know, 200 of them. And you think I'm joking because I'm not a serious pup here, but we all know that I'm a serious pup here, and even though the records have been lost to time, an ex-world record holder who'll remain anonymous due to personal reasons actually falls into that boat. And let me tell you, I love this game dearly. That's not a boat that I want to be in. All of that being said, this doesn't mean that mix spots magically don't exist in Return to Dreamland. Far from it, they're actually more common than you'd expect. There's an old strat in 7.2, Dangerous Dinner 2, that actually ditched wing in favor of hammer for a faster super bonkers fight, ending with a mix involving these three ninja dudes. But wing is just so cracked that it doesn't even save time. In one player hundo, you still use this mix, so if you lament the loss of a Return to Dreamland mix, you've got that, and you're one sick soul for doing so. Even ignoring the required mixes, though, backup mixes are some of the most interesting. For example, there are opportunities that you can lose wing in 4-1, or White Wafers 1, but hope is not lost. Did you know that these spiky fellas give you needle? And there's a lot of them in this level. In fact, there's 3 in a row. The cogs in my brain are turning. Puppy might be smart. Give me a minute. Oh, okay, I did the mix already. Mixing is so cool in this game, I hate how RNG it is! Now, Return Deluxe made one major change to mixing that everybody caught onto immediately. Not only is the mix roulette order the same every time, it reverted the number of enemies you need to inhale back to 2 instead of 3. With a catch. You need to inhale 2 enemies that give you different abilities. If they give you Cutter, for example, you're just gonna get Cutter. However, if you add a 3rd enemy into the mix, get it, then it acts just like the original. So if you inhale 3 Cutter enemies, you'll get a mix. Inhale 2, you get Cutter. Obviously, this opens up a lot more mix opportunities, but it doesn't wind up mattering too much for actual speedrunning. Unless, of course, you need a backup, you lose wing or something, in which case, it's a godsend. For any percent, you get wing in the 1st room instead of the 3rd, and that's about the only change that matters. For 100%, it definitely has the potential to save time when you don't have wing, but seeing as how most runs are 2-player focused these days, and nobody's really optimized Return Deluxe specifically yet, there is not much to say. For now, Return Deluxe is a less punishing version of the original. There are reasons why it never got that big compared to the original, but I think that's a topic for another video. And yes, for those of you looking at the footage, this mix took me forever. I did get it, but no joke, this took me a good 7.5 minutes. But I got it! Some of the most fun you can have with mixes, speedrunning or not, is just looking for setups to get the mixes done. One game in particular has always stood out to me with these setups. And maybe it's due to the nature of the game, maybe it's because it was actually intended, or it could just be that puppy goated! But Amazing Mirror is my favorite game to find mix opportunities in the series. They're everywhere, and if you're creative enough, the opportunities feel limitless. I could give specific examples, but I know I'm going to record at least like 10 different ones that aren't related to any percent, so you can either look at the background footage in awe as I mix and hope I get sleep because that's funny, or you can take my word for it because I never lie to you. You know that, right? Considering I already know the answer to that, we can get into the fun part and actually talk speedrunning. Backup mixes obviously exist, but for any percent, there are 4 main mixes that you gotta get right, with a 5th one that not everybody goes for. I'm no good with more controversial topics like this, so let's go over the others. The first mix to get involves self-harm. That's not controversial at all, right? So obviously, I'm just joking here, and when I say it like this, I really hope it's not controversial. Please don't do self-harm, you matter. But for the context of Amazing Mirror, you do need to damage Kirby to get the first mix. It might sound weird, but this is a great testament to not only how creative Kirby speedruns can get, but also how insane mix setups can be if you know how these games work. In the 3rd room of the game, there's a Sword Knight and a Cupid. I wonder what abilities these enemies give. Anyway, they both have a set pattern that they'll always follow, but none of them line up in a way that results in a proper mix setup. So what is one to do? Easy! Just jump into the Cupie and bam, easy mix. And obviously, any percent goes for wheel with this mix, but if you know the timing or just want to leave things up to chance, you can go for any ability you want, and life is just fun that way. My favorite of these mixes, by far, is in World 6, Olive Ocean. This area is legendary for having a bit where you need to use a mini to get a spray paint, thus not only allowing me to mention the ever epic all spray speedrun, but also mini in and of itself is the most hype ability, oh my god! But any percent's most fatal flaw is that there's no mini, so we won't be talking about that. Instead, we can talk about UFO! The average Amazing Mirror apologist would immediately think that I'm talking about the UFO enemy right before the boss. But no, Stone makes much faster work of the shark, whose name I never remember, than UFO would. But hear me out. You see these two Folies? They both give you bomb, but if you get too close, they're gonna fall and explode. You can't get an easy mix this way, and going to the other side, off-screening them so that they respawn, and then inhaling them for the mix, that takes way too long. But, check this out. Okay, so 3 things. First off, I love this mix so much, it is so cool! Second, for an actual breakdown of how this works, floating and entering a body of water works in very interesting ways. You don't release your air puff, but unlike being on solid ground, Kirby will float straight up. You can still release your air puff, but you'll immediately go into an underwater state, what with the epic scuba gear and such, limiting your options. That said, this gives the air puff next to no end lag, and the specific waterfall current goes up, giving it effectively no end lag. If you jump out of the side after air puffing the first Foley, it ends up in the perfect spot to where you can mix. And the third thing I want to detail is the backup strat. The ability immediately after UFO in this game's roulette wheel is fire, and for the one thing that you actually need the ability for, which is sniping this bomb block, you'll see it on screen soon, fire can actually get the job done. Meaning, if you miss UFO but get fire, you're good. This means that this is actually an 8-frame mix instead of a 4-frame one, and while that doesn't sound like much, it's still really not much, but if you speedrun Kirby enough, you know 8 frames compared to 4 is like an entire lifetime's worth of opportunity. The other 2 mixes aren't as exciting, but they're still really fun. Here's another one involving an air puff on 2 Folies. Seriously, if I had a nickel for every time 2 Folies were involved for an any percent mix in this game, I'd have 2 nickels. And this final mix against the almost final phase of the final boss, Dark Mind. The green stars he shoots give you mix, although if you inhale 2 of the other colored stars, those can also give you mix. So many options. The final controversial mix is right before the boss of Peppermint Palace. 2 of the 3 enemies in this vertical row, if timed properly, can be inhaled for a hammer mix. That said, getting the mix right on top of having slightly worse mobility compared to the other mixless ability that you use, Hammer isn't even always faster. At least at the time of this writing, the current world record doesn't even go for it, opting instead for the more reliable, historically used ability, which is, you guessed it, baby, it's Parasol! Best ability in the series. Mixing is for scrubs and Parasol is for pups. Let's go! Mixing as a mechanic also makes its way into the spin-offs, albeit far less frequently. You aren't gonna find mixing in games like, say, Blowout Blast or Canvas Curse, but every so often it pops its head in. For example, while it isn't quite called a mix, and it doesn't involve multiple enemies, Kirby's Dream Course does have mixing. These funky little dudes that are minding their own business can give you a random ability when you ram into them, ending their life, although the timing on getting the correct ability is really difficult. That said, they can give you UFO if you're epic enough, and by that I mean you get lucky or time it right, and if you know anything about Dream Course, you know that UFO is really good. Even if you don't get UFO, stuff like Tornado and Burning are right there. I actually argue personally that Tornado is even better than UFO, but that's for another video. Spin-off or not, of course, mixing isn't essential to every single Kirby game. And I'm not just talking about stuff like the return games, where you basically don't have to mix, but you still have to mix. No, even in games you can actually find it in, sometimes it's just not worth trying to set up at all. And notably, Kirby's 3DS adventures, Triple Deluxe, and Planet Robobot require 0 mixing, and for many people are better off for it. If you're running Hundo, you do need to time the goal game perfectly every single time for keychains and stickers, so there's still some agony for you there, if you like that sort of thing. Both of these games have great speedruns that don't need mix to be good, but that isn't why mixing isn't in the runs at all. The main reason is that there just aren't a lot of mix spots. While mix is rude and starts at a random spot like in the Return games, the actual order of the abilities, similar to Return Deluxe, is the same every time. You also only need to inhale 2 enemies that give different abilities, again, similar to Return Deluxe, or, well, Deluxe is similar to Deluxe, or, rather, I mean, my head hurts. The actual mix setups simply aren't there, and if they are, they're in spots that don't really matter. In both of these games, Fire is absurdly good and is by all means a very common ability, unlike the standard fast abilities like Wheel and Wing. Jet is super good in Robobot, even better than Fire, but is also found pretty early. Not quite worth going for when you still have Fire. Boss killing abilities like Cutter and Hammer are also used throughout the run, but often these are given to you and are serviceable enough until you find the correct enemy. There's probably not even a mix spot until then anyway, which adds even more fuel to the fire. Bravo to me on that one, by the way. Wordplay for both Jet and Fire on that one. Wing in Triple Deluxe is also very good, but mostly only better than Fire for moving up. Otherwise, Fire, which is what you're going to have anyway, is much better. It's still very valuable for when you need to move up and Wing is there, but not quite worth mixing for. All of that is to say, mixing isn't required for a Kirby speedrun to be enjoyable. Heck, games like the Dark Matter trilogy don't even have mixing, period. It's not like the 3DS games where you can, but you just can't. These don't have it at all. But you know what? That doesn't stop them from being amazing. I actually love Dreamland 2 any percent and find it to be way better than playing the game casually. Its unique traits really come alive when you speedrun instead of just having to slog through a casual playthrough. As for Dreamland 3, if you have working thumbs, I genuinely think it's a great time, but I mean, I could play Dreamland 3 anyway and still love the heck out of it. That's just one of my favorite games in the series. Just, again, make sure you take care of your thumbs if you do decide to play it, and if you don't have working thumbs, sorry. As for Kirby 64, this game actually has mixing, but not the kind that we're talking about. Oh well. Everything having been said, if there is one thing that I don't want this video to be, it's making mix seem like this unapproachable concept, only doable by the best of pros. Getting an exact ability is hard, but not only can you get the timing down to learn, but the actual act of setting up a mix can actually be pretty easy and super rewarding. And mixing itself isn't even hard in every game. Particularly, Forgotten Land made mixing super easy. The mix order is always the same, similar to the older games, and after shuffling through the ability list for a bit, the roulette wheel slows down by a lot. Like a whole lot. To the point where I was able to consistently get the ability I wanted, and by consistently, I mean 5 times in a row consistently, after only failing once. Again, look at the footage, it's really easy. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it's useless, of course. There's plenty of speedrun applications for mixing, even here. That said, most of the mixes have died out of speedrunning in modern Forgotten Land. The game has just been really optimized since it came out, plus the inclusion of HSJ, or Hammer Super Jumps, a topic for its own video, got rid of more niche abilities that you get from a mix to begin with. Still, mixing is not only important for backup strats, but also for accessibility. A lot of the setups that avoid mixing are pretty advanced and are hard to pull off. If you just want to get your feet wet with Kirby speedrunning and don't want to learn the really tough stuff, mixing can really help you out. A favorite mix of mine, albeit one that's long outdated, is in the final level of the game. After clearing this water-treaded obstacle course, or just using HSJ if you're boring, or using the enemy bounce equivalent if you're super epic like this puppy! A brief enemy gauntlet opens up before a hang glider segment. There's a crash enemy in the room prior you can use to wipe out the enemies, but you're left abilityless. Unless, of course, you go back 2 steps and break these boxes, allowing you to inhale these 2 enemies. Whether or not you go for a more mobility-focused approach to make this next section go by quicker, or you go for crash to make day-to-day a little faster, it's outdated regardless. You want to go for drill. That's actually the fastest ability to beat day-to-day with. But by the way, we all know and love Chili, but did you know that these ranger enemies are named Bernard? Leave a comment if you love Bernard. I know I love Bernard. A harder mix, which has also been optimized out of any percent, but is certainly easier than the alternative, involves mixing for Tornado in Welcome to Wandaria 3-1. You can slide kick into this needleless enemy. I wonder which ability that enemy gives. I did this joke already. And if you're quick enough, can inhale both of them to get Tornado. I explained it kind of quickly, but it's definitely harder than I made it out to be. You really want Tornado for that next room though, and the alternative is learning how to beat Tropic Woods with Tornado by not using Tornado. It's very easy to mess up and costs a lot more time than messing up this mix and just opting for Fire instead. So I would definitely suggest learning this mix unless you're going for like a super fast time or something, world record, whatever. My favorite mix in the whole game, and in my opinion, the most important by a country mile, because I hated the mission you use it for before learning about the mix, is this Crash mix in Battle on Blizzard Bridge, or 4-4, whatever floats your boat at this point. If you slide kick into this needleless, I wonder what okay, and time it so that it lands near the Burning Leo, you can inhale both of them. As long as you've inhaled Crash, you can get Crash from the mix. Then the two Mr. Frosties show up and your stomach turns. Oh no, I have to do this stupid damageless mission. It's so annoying. They move so fast and they're so huge in this arena. It's nearly impossible to not get hit. How do I? Oh, Crash just one-shots both of them. Yay! This also works with Time Crash, if you're wondering, although you wouldn't have that in a speedrun setting. This is also the only mix that is still used in no HSJ any percent, and is another reason why I don't like HSJ, that also optimized it out. In general, I appreciate how much easier Forgotten Land made getting the ability you want from mixing, because it's the one part about mixing that's actually hard. It's varied in difficulty from game to game, but if Forgotten Land was the easiest, I'd have to argue that the hardest game for mixing is the very game it debuted in, Kirby's Adventure. The good news is that mixing, while still hard, is a lot easier in the remake, Nightmare in Dreamland. And Nightmare is a very fun speed game, and I definitely recommend trying it out. Adventure is also a very fun speed game, albeit very different and very, very hard. It's also category dependent, but there are so many variants of any percent in Adventure, thanks to glitches, that we can cover 3 of them and still not go over everything. Thankfully, we can stay cozy a little while longer and talk about the easiest mix of them all in any percent. Just any percent. I promise it's gonna make sense later. For now, all you need to know is that you use Stone to beat the game in 40 seconds, and to get Stone early, you mix. What makes this mix easy is that it's the first ability in the roulette wheel, so as soon as you swallow the 2 waddle-doo at the start of the level for the mix, you can just hold the button and you get Stone. Yay! Alright, now coziness gone. Any percent, no major glitches, or NMG as I'll be calling it going forward. I speedrun Kirby, I speedrun sentences. What's Puppy gonna do next? There's some easy mixes here too, like this Burning mix in Grape Gardens 5 or 4-5 that also uses a slide kick to look super fancy. I'm so fancy. I play my retro games instead of retro games. Nightmare in Dreamland turns 22 this year. You're not smart. And there are also mixes where you can let the roulette wheel run its course, like this Double Rocky mix in 3-1. Butter building one. I'm ending this bit here, even though I don't know which formatting you all prefer, okay? There are mixes scattered all throughout NMG that can be nightmares to get right though. For example, in Butter Building 3, while you're running and funning through the rotating building, you kinda have to inhale these 2 high jump enemies and mix if you want a shot at having a good time. You need to ditch Tornado earlier in Butter Building, and this is the best mix to get it back in. If you mess up, it's fine, you can just try to use high jump, but then you need to do a harder mix in Butter Building 5, so have fun with that. Yogurt Yard 1 has a Tornado mix with 2 Rockies that uses a slide kick again, which is fun, but have fun mixing correctly, since you have to lose a life if you mess it up, so yay. Rainbow Resort 3 has a fairly easy one involving 2 Naughties, or at least they make it look easy, but genuinely this is way harder than it looks, inhaling 2 of them at once. They don't seem that far apart, but unfortunately for us, they're practicing proper social distancing. I mean, good for them. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you can. I'm being serious here. Please care about other people. For the mix itself, maybe if this was the worst mix in the game, I'd be more bothered. But Grape Garden 4 is unique and quirky because it has 2 mixes instead of 1. Yay! The first one is for wheel, and if nothing else, it makes the room right after it a lot cooler than you'd expect. It's also worth it even in a more casual setting because it saves good time, but the setup and timing are pretty annoying. That said, pretty annoying is far better than the one directly after. One look at this disaster right here, you should hopefully understand why it's the worst in the game, but just look at the footage. All too often, this is what happens. And yes, you are seeing me use Switch Rewind just to emphasize how bad this is. Getting the proper timing and momentum to get both of them is really, really hard. But the problem is, even if you get the timing right, you still need to mix. So, okay, is it an easy mix? No, you have to get the timing right or else you'll end up with a useless ability that's probably not going to help against the mini-boss ahead. And yes, this is why you need to mix, because even in a casual setting, you have wheel. Wheel can do things versus mini-bosses that don't grab you, but guess what? This one grabs you. Oops! So you learn the mix timing, you get both enemies, mix for UFO correctly, and beat the boss. Great, fantastic! You have UFO for like 1 or 2 rooms, and then the level's over, now you've got no ability. There's a silver lining here at least, and that's that the number after 4 is 5. So that fun and really easy slide kick mix in Grape Garden 5 that I was talking about before, that only happens because this mix is so bad. All of the issues I talked about with Kirby's Adventure mixing also apply to the third and final any percent for this game that we'll be talking about today, any percent no stone glitch, or UFO percent as many people call it, myself included. Basically, due to a glitch that I explained in my UFO spotlight that I hopefully remember to put in the annotations of the video, you can take UFO outside of any and every level, meaning that you can use it in any and every level. It's really neat, but to get it as early as you can, you know what you gotta do. Mix for it. You actually need to mix for it multiple times, given UFO can't go down ladders. It's #1 enemy, of course. But at least there's nothing quite as bad as Grape Garden 4. The glitch itself is really hard to pull off, but the mix setups that are concerned, they're pretty par for the course. Still hard given everything we've gone over, but they could be a lot worse. At the end of the day though, I still find mixing, even in Adventure, a lot of fun. I don't think it's a stretch to say that copy abilities are the defining feature of Kirby as a series, regardless of how you enjoy this franchise. Being able to reliably, consistently, and in many cases easily, set up methods to get your favorite ability is an absolute blessing. Mixing itself is super unique and really only something that you can do in a game like Kirby. Sure, there are games like Mario RPG with similar get an item or something, but you have to time your jump right mechanics, but for something as defining and tied to the core essence of every game like Kirby and copy abilities are, you're only gonna get that in a game like Kirby. What I also really love about mixing is that it isn't super easy. Everything else is easy, but the actual mix, you legitimately need to work to get the ability that you want, which not only makes getting it far more satisfying, but if you mess it up, it encourages you to stick with whatever ability you get. Even in Forgotten Land, where it's easy, there's just enough room for error where I don't think it's too easy. And of course, the best thing about Mix is what I spent the last 33.5 minutes talking about. What it allows for with speedrunning. I've talked about it in this video enough, but if you want another reason why it's so great, I have to say it again, please check out my Return to Dreamland ability solo series, where I use Mix to get any ability in the third room of the game and speedrun the entire thing with that one ability. It's only possible thanks to mixing, and I couldn't be happier because of that. With all of that being said though, I've got more work to do and plenty of more mixes to practice, so I'll see you in another video. I've been Klaire, please take care of yourself, and I'll hopefully see you all soon. Bye-bye! But first, have you ever wondered what I smell like? Hey, don't click off the video, I promise this isn't anything weird. I'm just saying, if you want to know my scent, I have a candle! It is called the Vanilla Fluffle Scented Candle, and I think it came out really, really well. At the checkout, you can either decide to get a normal candle or one with a wooden wick if you like to hear that crackling sound. I don't think that's it, but that's the sound that I wanted to make in the moment. Not only is this website a trusted source, and you can have a little more Fluffle in the house, and if you use the link in the description down there, you will also be supporting me for no extra cost. Thank you very much again to Candle for this opportunity. This isn't a sponsored video or anything. I just wanted to let you guys know I have a candle now. Now, on with the video.